With ReZero Season 4 Core 2 on the horizon, I thought this was the perfect time to revisit the entire series from the beginning and break it down. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Season 1 made me hate Subaru. I'm not kidding. For the majority of Season 1, Subaru was easily my biggest issue with the show. At first, ReZero looked like any other isekai. Subaru gets transported to another world, he meets Amelia and discovers return by death, an insanely cool power. On paper, it just sounds like the start of an amazing fantasy adventure with Shorty. But the more Season 1 went on, the harder it was to watch Subaru. He just kept making things worse. He was insufferable, he was shameless. And every time I thought he was finally about to lock in, he somehow found a new and innovative way to make me say, this guy is so insufferable. But then that fateful episode 18 happened. And in hindsight, Season 1 hits different because Subaru being hard to like was definitely the point. Him being plain insufferable was not a writing flaw that we had to push through. It was the intentional, emotional design of Season 1. The story makes you frustrated with Subaru so that when he finally breaks, admits what he hates about himself and chooses to start from zero. As cheesy as that sounds, his growth feels genuinely earned. The first reason Subaru is so hard to like at the start of ReZero is because he thinks he is the main character when really he is only the main character to us. To be fair, it's not a crazy assumption for him to make. If you were suddenly transported into a fantasy world and instantly were met by knights, magic, and mysterious silver-haired elves, you'd probably also think you're him. But the fact that Subaru isn't him is something that ReZero relentlessly attacks almost immediately. When Subaru first arrives, he does not treat this world seriously. He treats it like an isekai dream come true instead of a real place with real danger. He assumes that this is the moment he has been waiting for. His boring old life of reading doujinshi after visiting the convenience store is finally going to be replaced with an exciting fantasy adventure where he matters most as its star. And that is the main issue. Subaru is not annoying at the start because he is weak. Don't get it twisted. Being weak is not the issue. The later seasons even prove that Subaru can be a weak protagonist and still be easy to root for. But Subaru of Season 1 is annoying because he gets transported into another world and immediately starts acting as if that means the world is all about him. Season 1, though, had no interest in giving Subaru his perfect fantasy because nearly straight away, Subaru is humbled, jumped by common street thugs. Not some demon lord, not some legendary knight, but fodder. And he even needs Shorty to step in and help him. That should already tell you a lot about the type of story ReZero is going to be. Subaru is only imagining himself as the hero of this world, but from the very beginning, he is not the one saving the princess. The princess is the one saving him. Don't even get me started with the loot house. ReZero really made it a point to ensure that we know Subaru ain't crap in this world. Not yet. This is where Elsa the baddie enters the story, and Subaru is completely outmatched. He was already struggling against common street thugs, and now against Elsa. Dear Lord, there could not be a better way to tell him that he is not ready for this world at all. He is scared, confused, and constantly being thrown into death loop after death loop against someone so superior to him. And that is when you realize Return by Death is not some cool overpowered ability. He can't even go on a training arc, bust out 10,000 hours worth of sword swings, die, and come back a sword master because his body resets every time. So even his power does not actually make him stronger in the way a normal power fantasy would. Obviously, the ability is useful because it gives Subaru essentially eternal life, but emotionally, that ish is scary. His power will never stop him from being weak. Really, it just forces him to experience the consequences of his weakness over and over again. This is what makes ReZero different from the power fantasy that Subaru thought he was transported into. This world is dangerous. It does not give a damn about his confidence, and it definitely does not give a damn that he thinks he is supposed to be its protagonist. Even in episode 3, when Subaru becomes a store merchant and actually does contribute against Elsa, the situation is only truly resolved once Reinhardt, the real hero, arrives. And this moment is particularly important because the story is not saying Subaru is useless. I'm not saying Subaru is useless. That's not the point. Subaru can be brave. He can care about people. He can throw himself into danger even when he is terrified. And honestly, those are some of his best qualities. But bravery and kindness alone do not make him the hero he imagines himself to be. When Reinhardt shows up, the gap becomes undeniably obvious. That is what a real hero looks like in this world. Someone with the ability to resolve these situations. Subaru, at this point, is nowhere near that level. He is a guy who so desperately wants the role of the hero before he has gained the humility that role requires. And that is Season 1 Subaru's problem. There is a huge gap between who he thinks he is and who he actually is. In his mind, transporting to another world meant finally becoming the guy. But in reality, it does not magically erase the fact that he is weak and immature, that he is constantly surviving because someone stronger or more capable is there to help him. Which, by the way, does not make him a bad character. It makes him a frustrating one. And that frustration is important because the humility he needs is something that can only come through experience. ReZero is not just going to humble Subaru physically, it is going to keep tearing down the fantasy that he has of himself until there is nothing left for him to hide behind, while we are forced to sit through every excruciating step of it. Now, this is where Season 1 starts to get really painful. Subaru becomes even harder to watch because the story starts exposing his flaws as something genuinely ugly. His bravery is real, his loyalty is real, his love for Amelia is real, but so is his ego, his entitlement, and his desperation to be seen as important. That is what makes the middle of Season 1 hard to sit through. At this point, Subaru is not just embarrassing himself, he starts dragging other people into his fantasy. The clearest example of this is the royal selection. This is the moment Subaru decides to participate in the Make It All About Myself challenge, because Amelia specifically told him not to involve himself, but he does it anyway. And if that wasn't bad enough already, Subaru is not just chiming into a random conversation, he is inserting himself into one of the highest stakes political situations this world has to offer, despite barely understanding anything about it. This is not a group project where he can just wing it. Heck, it's not even a group project that he is a part of. This is the royal selection. This is Amelia's future, something that will define her reputation and that she has to carry with her forever. But Subaru casually walks in with all that main character energy without any of the main character traits. To make matters worse, he publicly declares himself as her knight. It is indeed a noble gesture, but doing that in front of every knight in Lagunica is insane. He has not earned that position, and clearly, he does not understand what that position actually represents. This is where Subaru's desire to be the hero stops being noble and starts becoming harmful. He thinks he is bravely defending Amelia, but really, he is forcing himself into her story because he wants to be important to her. And it hurts to see because he genuinely does care about her. That is what makes it complicated. Subaru's love for Amelia is far from fake, but his love is so dangerously entangled with his ego that he can't separate protecting Amelia from needing to be seen as her protector. That is why this moment is so frustrating. He claims he is doing this for her, but he is not actually listening to her. He wants to stand beside her so badly that he ends up making her situation worse. And then Julius pulls up. Brother, this was a tough watch. After Subaru pretty much insulted the entire royal guard by declaring himself a knight and kept acting like he was worthy of the title, Julius challenged him to a duel. He was not having it and completely dismantled him. I'm talking belt to ass in front of everyone. The homies, the ladies, even Amelia. This fight is Subaru's pride getting beaten out of him in the most literal sense. And as brutal as it is, Julius becomes Subaru's biggest reality check yet. He wants to be recognized as Amelia's knight, but Julius shows him that there are levels to this. There is a huge difference between wanting a title and actually being worthy of it. In other words, Subaru wants the respect and emotional validation that comes with being Amelia's knight, but he does not yet have the discipline and humility that the role requires. So instead of looking heroic, he looks like the complete opposite. He looks small, he looks immature, he looks completely out of his element. And that is why episode 13 is probably the most excruciating episode of season 1 to watch. Subaru can't afford to be goofy. This is not him being a little bit weird in his own way. It is his worst traits being put on full display in the most humiliating way possible. His fight with Julius was pretty bad, but honestly, the argument with Amelia might have been even worse. After that royal selection disaster class, Subaru starts listing every little thing he has done for Amelia, almost expecting her to understand the loops and suffering he has gone through for her, which is ridiculous. But that is the tragedy of Subaru's situation. From his perspective, he has suffered endlessly for the people he cares about. He has died over and over again. He has to carry memories that nobody else will ever remember. So to him, it feels like he has gone to hell and back for Emilia. But from her perspective, Subaru is lashing out for no reason. He is someone she recently met, and yet he embarrassed her in public, ignored her wishes, and then started demanding credit for the things he did for her that she could not possibly know happened. And it is that gap in perspective that makes him so frustrating to watch. Subaru's pain is real, but he starts acting as if that pain automatically justifies anything he does. He reeks of desperation, and it is this same desperation that becomes even clearer when he tries to get help from the other candidates. He wants people to trust him, and yet he cannot give them a good reason why. He wants people to take action quickly, and yet he cannot properly explain what he knows. It is no wonder he comes off as unstable and impossible to trust. This is probably the roughest version of Subaru that you will ever have to sit through. The story does not pretend Subaru's suffering is meaningless, but it also does not let Subaru use that suffering as an excuse to make the world revolve around him. By this point, rezero is not just humbling Subaru physically, it is humbling him psychologically and emotionally too, shattering the fantasy that he has of himself. The fantasy that being an isekai protagonist automatically means that he is special, that he should be trusted and respected. The story forces us to sit through the worst version of him, not because it wants us to hate him forever, but because his eventual growth feels so much more earned and satisfying when we understand exactly what needs to change. Subaru does not just need to become stronger, he needs to become humble enough to admit that he is not entitled to love, trust, or understanding just because he suffered. Wanting to become someone's hero does not mean you have earned the right to be one. And all this is exactly why episode 18 hits as hard as it does. This is the point where Subaru finally becomes easier to root for. Not because he suddenly becomes cool, and definitely not because the story pretends all of his worst moments never happened. He becomes easier to root for because he finally stops trying to be the hero and admits the truth to himself. He is weak, he is insecure, and yeah, he hates himself. It is in this episode that Subaru completely loses it in front of Rem, and for the first time says out loud everything that the season has been forcing us to watch. He hates how he runs away. He hates that he makes excuses and still expects people to see something special in him. The reason this moment works so well is because it does not come out of nowhere. We have already seen Subaru at his worst. So when he finally breaks down and admits that he hates himself, it does not feel random. It feels like the truth is finally coming out. And that is why episode 18 is so powerful. Not because Rem simply makes Subaru feel better, but it is powerful because Subaru finally admits that the version of himself that we have been watching cannot be the future. Now it is Rem's time to shine. She does not sweep Subaru's flaws under the rug. She does not sit there and pretend he is perfect, that those really ugly moments of his never happened. Instead, she listens to Subaru at his lowest and still chooses to believe in the version of him that is worth saving. And yes, this is a large reason why most people think Rem is best girl. Not me, Emilia, or Day. But seriously though, what Rem does here really matters. She reminds Subaru that even though he sees himself as worthless, that is not the only version of him that exists. There is still a version of him that saved people, that stood up even when he was terrified, that despite hating himself still wanted to do something good. And that is why From Zero matters. It is not Rem magically fixing Subaru. It is not Subaru getting rewarded for pretending to be strong. It is Subaru being given the courage to keep trying and stop defining himself only by his worst traits. That is the difference. Up until this point, Subaru has either tried to act like he was special or completely lost it over the fact that he was not. Like, calm down, Subaru. You're not Reinhard, buddy. You're not that guy. But episode 18 gives him another path. He does not have to be the perfect hero. He does not have to be Reinhard. He simply needs to start again from zero instead of acting like he has a leg up in this world. And after that episode, you can actually feel the difference in how Subaru starts moving throughout the rest of the season. He might still be weak and flawed. He might still not suddenly be some overpowered isekai protagonist, but he starts acting with a humility we had not really seen before. Instead of demanding trust, he starts building it. Instead of forcing himself into the lone hero role, he starts relying on other people. people. He works with Krush, Anastasia, and even Julius, the same man who completely sunned him in front of everyone. And that matters most, because it shows that Subaru has genuinely changed. The old Subaru wanted people to recognize him as important before he earned anything, but the new Subaru starts to build real trust through action. He helps form a plan to take down the white whale. He helps move the story forward, not by acting like the strongest person in the room, but by understanding how he can actually contribute. Planning, teamwork, persistence. These are things no one can take away from him. This is where Subaru starts becoming truly strong in his own way. And that is why the final stretch of season 1 is so satisfying, and why I finally shifted my opinion on Subaru. It works so well because he finally accepted what he is not, and used what he actually has, rather than trying to be someone completely different overnight. He may not be the chosen one he imagined himself to be, but he can still be useful. He can still be brave. He can still choose to stand back up after being completely broken. This entire journey across season 1 makes his growth feel genuinely earned. Subaru starting from zero matters because it does not erase how insufferable he was before. It reframes it. Season 1 needed us to see the absolute worst version of Subaru so that when he finally chooses humility, it does not feel automatic. It feels like something he had to suffer for and actively choose. That is why season 1 hits so much harder in hindsight. It made me frustrated with Subaru on purpose. It made me sit through all the ego, entitlement, and Subaru just plain hating himself, so that when he finally stopped pretending to be the hero and chose to start again from zero, I actually wanted to root for him. So yeah, ReZero season 1 made me hate Subaru, but looking back at it now, that frustration was definitely not a weakness of the story. It was the setup. Season 1 makes Subaru hard to watch on purpose, because his growth is so satisfying only if we understand exactly what he had to grow out of. He was not annoying because he was weak. He was annoying because his weakness was shrouded in ego. He wanted to be important so badly. He wanted to be Emilia's hero so badly before he actually earned the right to be any of those things. And that is what makes episode 18 and everything after it make season 2 something to look forward to. Subaru becomes easier to root for because he finally looks at his worst moments honestly and chooses to start again. That is what starting from zero really means. To focus on what he can do instead of what he can't. Now, with season 4 core 2 on the horizon, going back to the beginning made me appreciate season 1 way more than I did on the first watch. It did its thing, because ReZero did not make me like Subaru by pretending he was always easy to root for. It made me root for him by forcing him to actually earn it from the ground up, from zero. See what I did there? If you made it to the end, thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think of ReZero season 1 in the comment section below. Also, it would mean a lot to me if you left a like, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more ReZero videos like this.